She sat on the edge of the wooden bench at the small-town train station, her trembling fingers clutching a bouquet of white roses that no longer felt fresh. The train that had brought her here had already gone, carrying strangers to faraway destinations, while she remained behind with nothing but her suitcase, her torn veil, and the heavy silence pressing down on her chest. The late afternoon sun stretched shadows across the ground, but she barely noticed. Her heart was too busy breaking piece by piece as she waited for someone who would never come. Her groom, the man who had promised her forever, had abandoned her before forever could even begin. She wasn't surprised, not entirely. Ever since the accident that had scarred her face, she had felt the stares, the whispers, the cruel pity that followed her wherever she went. She had once been called beautiful, radiant even, but those days were buried under the marks of fire and pain. The mirror reminded her every morning of the cruel turn her life had taken. Still, when he had said he loved her, when he had looked past her scars and asked her to marry him, she had dared to believe. She had chosen hope over fear. She had stitched together the pieces of her broken confidence and wrapped them up in a wedding dress, stepping into the station as a bride ready to travel to her new life. But he never arrived. He had left her with nothing but humiliation and silence, the kind that made her chest ache as though she was gasping for air. The station grew quieter as evening fell, and the few people who passed by gave her long glances, some filled with pity, others with curiosity. Children tugged at their mothers' skirts, whispering questions about the strange bride sitting all alone. She lowered her face, clutching the bouquet tighter, wishing she could vanish into thin air. Shame settled over her like a heavy blanket. Every second felt like an eternity. She thought of leaving, of dragging her suitcase somewhere far away where no one would see her tears, but her legs refused to move. It was as though her broken heart had nailed her to the bench. It was then that she heard the slow, uneven sound of boots approaching, their rhythm steady but slightly heavy, as if the man walking carried the weight of his own battles. She lifted her eyes just enough to see him. A tall figure in a worn cowboy hat, with shoulders broad from years of work under the sun, stood a few steps away. His face was partly shadowed by the brim, but when he moved closer, she saw the scars. They stretched across his cheek and jaw, deep lines carved by some tragedy of his own. The world had not been gentle to him either. Yet, there was something in his eyes, steady, kind, unflinching, that caught her breath. He did not look away from her. He did not pity her. He simply saw her. "You look like you've been waiting for someone," he said, his voice calm, low, and steady, like the kind of voice you'd want to hear on a stormy night. She couldn't answer. Her throat was too tight. She just nodded, blinking away the tears that threatened to spill. He glanced at the bouquet in her hand, at the dress that had lost its glow from dust and despair, and he seemed to understand without her saying a word. He sat down beside her, not too close, not too far, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The train tracks stretched out in front of them, leading to places both near and distant. The sky deepened into shades of gold and pink, the kind of beauty that almost hurt to look at when your own heart was raw. Finally, he turned his head toward her. "You know," he said softly, "scars don't take away beauty. They just mean you survived something the rest of the world couldn't." The words struck her like a spark in the dark. She had heard many things since the accident, pitying reassurances, cruel remarks, empty encouragements, but never something so simple, so true, and so full of acceptance. Her lips trembled as she tried to form a response. "That's easy to say," she whispered, "when you don't have to carry them on your face every day." He tilted his hat back slightly, revealing more of his own scars, raw and unhidden. "I carry mine every day," he replied. "And I stopped caring about who stared, because the right people don't look away." She studied him then, really studied him. He was not the prince-like figure she had once imagined as a husband. He was rough around the edges, with lines on his hands and stories in his eyes. But there was strength in his presence, a kind of unshakable steadiness that made her feel, for the first time that day, like she wasn't drowning. He was scarred, yes, but not broken. And he didn't see her as broken either. She felt something stir within her, something that whispered maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as unlovable as she had believed. The hours slipped by, unnoticed, as they spoke. She told him about the accident, about the fire that had changed everything, about the man who had promised to marry her and then abandoned her at the station. Her voice cracked often, but he never looked away, never flinched. When she was done, he shared his story. Years ago, he had been caught in a ranch fire while saving his younger brother. The scars had been his price for bravery, and though his brother survived, the world had never looked at him the same again. "But I reckon I don't need the world to approve of me," he said. "I just need to know I can wake up and face the man in the mirror without shame." Her heart ached at his words, but it was no longer the sharp pain of abandonment. It was something gentler, like empathy, like recognition. Here was a man who understood the weight she carried because he carried it too. And in his presence, the veil of shame began to lift, if only a little. As night fell, the station lights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the deserted platform. She realized she wasn't crying anymore. She was even smiling, just faintly, as he teased her gently about how stubborn hope could be. "Anyone else would have gone home by now," he said with a chuckle. "But not you. You stayed, even when your world crumbled." She looked at him, surprised. "What else could I have done?" He met her gaze steadily. "You could have given up. But you didn't. That makes you stronger than you think." For the first time in months, she felt a warmth that wasn't born of pain. She didn't know what the future held, or if she was ready to trust her heart again, but she knew this moment mattered. This scarred cowboy, this stranger who called her beautiful without hesitation, had given her a gift no one else had, the courage to believe in herself again. The train station was silent except for the distant hum of crickets in the fields, and the two of them sat side by side, two broken souls who somehow fit together in their brokenness. She knew life would never return to what it had once been. But perhaps, just perhaps, it could become something new. Something braver. Something beautiful.